So Jeffrey Myers has a bio somewhere that I don't have, so
I threw it together at the last second.
yeah, that's why I don't have it.
And I hate bios, and it's like, I had to write so many.
But he's gonna talk to us right now. Welcome, Jeffrey.
Hi. Hello, really nice to be here. Thank you all. I would like to start by, I would like to offer my gratitude to my dear, dear and old friend, Jenny Bird. And you all, some of you may remember I did a cover for Jenny.
Is your mic on?
In November. Is my mic on? It is not, I'm just talking.
There you go.
All right, is that better?
Yeah.
All right. Some of you may remember I was here and covered music in November, I think, something like that. So I just want to start by saying thank you to this wonderful community that I really am enjoying embracing and becoming a part of, and thank you to the team for trusting me and bringing me on. And then I would like to offer whatever meager thoughts that I have really to the divine source. And my request is that that my words land well, and that I speak directly from here and not too much of this. So this is an offering to you all and an offering to God. Having said that, the word God is so problematic, you can call it whatever you want. Religion is so problematic, you can deal with those feelings however you want. I say God because it's simple. Source also works, so however you want to connect with that. Just a little bit about me. I grew up very, very conservative, deep Republican South, Southern Baptist when we weren't Assemblies of God. So if you know the evangelical church, you have a pretty good idea of what my earliest foundation was. Before that, my mother grew up in a little sect. She hates it when I say this publicly. She grew up in a little sect of Christianity where the women were not allowed to take jobs, go to school, cut their hair, wear pants. Consequently, my earliest years, I was not allowed to wear shorts in the 107-degree Houston heat. I went swimming in denim blue jeans and a t-shirt until my dad left and my mother had a crisis of faith. And the very first thing that I did was recognizing my opportunity. I went to my mother and I had a pair of shorts tucked away in the bottom of my dresser. Little blue corduroy shorts, I'll never forget it. And I ran up to my bus, 6 years old. Ran up to my mother and I said, "Can I wear these?" Because she cut her hair, so I figured if my mother cut her hair.
How liberating for her.
A big section of the family photo album of my mother for the first time. I mean, she was in her 30s, she'd never cut her hair. So we can jump to the part where my whole family disowned me, except for my mother, because I didn't go that route. When I was in high school and I went through some pretty heavy duty crises as a young man, 15 years old. My own faith was totally shattered, and I went on a different kind of streak. The thing is I was very active in my youth group. I was very, very much a part of the goings on in a small community in rural Tennessee. And I left overnight. I had pastor coming to my house. I had youth pastor coming to my house. I had people at the school that I went to, Mount Juliet High School, who were devastated, couldn't look at me, couldn't speak to me because I had left all of this behind. And it took me on a journey that I'm still on. And I really give thanks. I give thanks to the source, to God, whatever you want to call it, that I'm still on this journey and not wasted on the side of the road. I first came to Taos 25 years ago as part of that journey as a young hippie. I'm sure no one in this room can relate to coming to Taos as a young hippie and then finding yourself here for a while. I've lived in and out of Taos for since then. I'm currently here and don't have any intention to go anywhere. And in finally making my final move to Taos, bringing my family with me. My family left in September, partner and stepdaughter. And so the last few months of this big moving to my beloved place has ended in tragedy, and that brings me to what I wanted to talk about today, which is surrendering to what is. When I looked at the title, it was very dry. I said something like, surrender, the nature of devotion, and something about the atypical Western mind or whatever. And really, us Westerners, we don't do really well with the word like surrender. So much of our culture is kind of built around never surrendering, right? Growing up in Texas, we have the Alamo, everything about the big wars that we've fought in. There's still a debate as to what happened in Vietnam. All these things are a huge part of our consciousness. Westerners don't want to surrender to anything. As a young man growing up, you're supposed to fight. Everything. You end up fighting everything. When you're raised to be a hammer, the whole world looks like a nail. And for a long time, I was very resistant to change in my life. I was very resistant to these big things that all of the greats say that's where the work is. These points of complete confusion, these points of discomfort, these points of even trauma. That's where the work is. And many people before me, Byron Katie, I was thinking about her in my meditation this morning. She says you got to lean into it. That's where the work is. Wherever your anxiety lies, wherever your discomfort lies. Now that doesn't mean that you need to necessarily put yourself in dangerous situations, but when it comes to, for me, a lot of my work is in the interpersonal, and having to, we have to deal with each other. Like, we just have to deal with each other, whether it's us in this room or you at Smith's trying to get through the self-checkout line. We've got to, that resonated with me. We've got to deal with each other. And, I eschew political talk for the obvious reasons, especially in kind of like where we're at right now, specifically in the space that we're in all together right now. But I really think that, that's a place where many of us could apply it. I'm not saying, the thing is surrender doesn't give up, doesn't mean give up, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean like, oh, party's over, I'm done, I'm gonna bury my head in the sand. Mm-hmm. Surrender just means this is what's happening. This is the reality. Buddhism talks about understanding the way of things, and the way of things is like, there's a stark reality that we come up against every single day, however we feel about it. And surrendering to what is, I think, is the first step in really enacting or exacting any kind of change. And, but first you gotta admit that this is, I'm gonna swear, this is the shit that we're in. And I really do believe that the micro, whatever you've got going on in your life, and the macro are not distinct and individuated. They are a part of the same field. So going back to my own lessons and my own journey of the last several months, the surrendering to what was happening in my life, the surrendering to this total upheaval of what I had worked on and what I had built and what I had created. I mean, I think everybody in this room, we've all lived a day on this planet. If you've lived a day on this planet, you've suffered. You have experienced sadness. You have experienced some trauma. And they say that's the nature of humanity, and I'm not sure that's true. I do think it's the nature of where we're at right now. And being able to process that, and this is all connected and in tune with the grieving process, right? This is all like this acceptance trip, right? I mean, honestly, the only thing to me at this point is working on accepting what's really going on around me so that I can get into that, and then I can start to develop my own navigation of it. So You know, I've been doing a morning journal, I've been doing an audio journal. I'm working on a podcast, I'm working on some writing projects. And in my morning journal, I wake up, sometimes I tend to wake up rather early, around 4:30. Some people call that the witching hour. I think it's kind of cool that the witching hour and then the time of day that most Hindus wake up and start praying is the same hour. So you can call that whatever you want, but to me, I always lean towards universalism. So I'm waking up earlier and earlier these days. And the audio journaling has really just been me kind of turning on a recorder, talking to myself for a minute. And the last couple weeks, it's all been about this journey of devotion and surrender. It's what keeps coming up for me, and it's why I decided that it was what I could talk about today, because when I'm with myself and sitting with myself, this is the conversation that I'm having with the source or my own true nature, or whatever you want to call it. So as we move kind of forward in our lives, like once you have, I think it's a solid foundation, and that doesn't mean, like, it doesn't stay there. You don't go, like I said, you don't admit defeat. That's not what surrender is in this context. Surrender is just allowing the things around you to take place as they're going to take place, and then you manage yourself within that. So having said that, I've seen in my life the world become more and more elevated, more and more extreme. There is less, I think that there's less nuanced discourse in any realm. And everybody, especially in America, and I'm of a mind that they pump it. The news media pumps it. Everybody, the social media pumps it. It's getting pumped into our brains, no matter what side of the spectrum you're on, that humanity is awful, we're in a crisis, the world is coming crashing down around your ears. Like, this is pumped into your brain. If you turn off a television for 48 hours, if you don't read a Facebook feed for 48 hours, if you go outside and talk to your neighbors, and if you do those things for 48 hours, you will immediately feel a sense of something lifting. So, and I really think that that's true. That doesn't mean that there isn't this work that needs to be done, and here we come back to the surrender trip. Like, the work needs to be done, but at the same time, like, we need to find the right way to frame it. We need to find the right perspective. At this point, I could feel as though I'm in danger. I could feel as though my friends are in danger. And I have friends that are in areas where they used to feel comfortable in their natural lifestyle, where they no longer feel comfortable in their natural lifestyle. And that's part of the political connotation. Those things do need to be addressed. This is real, there is real work that needs to be done in this. But if we can't get to a point of comfort and ease with ourselves within that, then I think what I see across the board is people giving up the fight before the fight has even happened. And again, I'll just keep leaning on the surrender thing. Surrender doesn't mean you've given up the fight. But I see people go, oh, we're screwed. And I try to steer away from political stuff, but the day of the election, 90% of my friends on Facebook lost their minds. And I get it. I absolutely get it. Like, I get it. And I've chosen to not lose my mind. I can see it, I can surrender to it, I can be in it. And I've worked really hard to preserve my mind. And I have gotten to a point where me and myself are really good friends again. And this nature, my own, who I am in here after the huge destruction of what I thought my life was, like coming back to a place of honoring myself, that's the work. And that's all part of the surrender, and that's all part of the leaning into the anxiety. That's all part of finding the discomfort and the uncomfortable parts and walking right into the middle of it. And I don't know where this came from. I don't think of it as a strength or anything. I think it's a resilience. And at this point, I've gotten too old to succumb anymore. And the world is our oyster. Like, it really is. The world, what you meditate on and what you focus on becomes your reality. Right? How do you say that in the same line with, we need to accept reality for how it is, but you also get to, dictate how your reality is? Like, how does that work? And again, and I'm not a Buddhist, but in Buddhism, it's framed as right speech, right thought, right action. Like, how do we get to this point of emotional stability? How do we get to this point of emotional centeredness? And that's what all this is about. I don't want to see my friends lose their minds. I don't want to see anyone having such a hard time internally that it disrupts what their ability to what they're able to do in the world. So how do we get there? And this isn't a denial, and it's not a bypassing. It comes back to an acceptance of this is where we're at. Now what do I do with that? And one of my heroes that I've been following for years is a man named Greg Braden. And Greg Braden talks about this. Dr. Joe Dispenza was a colleague. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this, that there really is an element in our minds that dictates the field that we are operating within. And if you think that there's a bad guy, or if you think that there's a negative entity out there of some kind, and there may be, I think there is personally, but I do believe that there is something being projected to try to interfere with our ability to become more than what we are and to become greater than the sum of our parts. So I do think we're under attack. And some of my favorite musicians have been talking about this for 50 years, you know? Joni Mitchell comes to mind immediately. A lot of that music from the 60s and 70s was talking about this. And then that got disrupted. So I don't think any of this is new, and I really don't think it's a puzzle either. I think it's here and it's very active. And we have been deluded, every single one of us. Even if you are actively trying to step out of that delusion, we are all actively within it. And the delusion itself, or if you change the way you term it, frame the terminology differently, in Hinduism it's just called Maya. And it's an important part of our evolution. The illusion is here to teach us something. But if we're all scrambling and kind of grabbing our butts and in fear and in sadness all the time, we're not able to activate with the work that actually needs to be done. And you can look at this as a political agenda if that's where it fits for you. For me, it comes back to the devotional path. It comes back to what Ram Dass said about the best thing I could do for you is to work on myself. And if I'm dysfunctional, I'm not really able to do much for anybody else. So again, this is just an opportunity to kind of sit with the nature of the world as it is right now and what is happening in the world right now. And then figure out I also think that all of this is an illusion. So if you can find a stillness, if you can find a centeredness, if you can find a place of balance and a place from which you can operate at a fuller capacity, then I think you're able to really do something. And we're able to come together in community like this and have this relation and have this connectivity that is happening outside of what Greg calls the transhumanist thing. Like, we don't need to connect through the computers. It works. We don't need to connect through our phones. That's a thing. We can connect right here in this space, and we can take that out of the equation and see what happens. We can connect in our own individual. Again, in line at Smith's, that's where the work is really happening, right? When you're at the bank, or when you're dealing with, if you are in retail and you're dealing with a difficult customer. That's where all this stuff matters. It's super easy to be in this space when when we've all agreed to come together collectively to honor an ideal or a concept, or at least honor space. But then you go out into the world. Again, was it Ram Dass, like anybody that thinks that they're enlightened should go spend a weekend with their family, right? Like that's where the work is really happening. So I'm kind of a nitty gritty guy. Like I don't think there's any point in wasting time or kidding ourselves. So, a good hard look. And I don't know if anybody's ever been in treatment or recovery. Part of the 12-step thing that a lot of people miss, is that honest self inventory. What is it, the honest and fearless, or however it's termed? Meaning you've got to take a look at yourself within all of this as well, and you've got to be honest with yourself. And I think if you're honest with yourself, you're more honest with the world outside. If you're more honest with the world outside, then you're already coming from a place of higher integrity. And that, you know, these are all just sort of like words that maybe make a little bit of sense, but you know, that's when it comes back. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with this acceptance? How do you deal with accepting the world as it is when it seems to have this very tarnished face? There's a Rumi poem about accepting God, meaning if you're going to truly accept this glory of God, then it's every blemish. Like it's every screwed up thing that everyone has ever done, as well as all this joy and grace. So I don't know, I think embracing the human experience and understanding exactly kind of where we are in it, where we are in time, where we are in history. I get a lot of hope from indigenous thought and some of the older world religions as far as how to navigate that. And in a lot of these, and then the deep seekers and the deep thinkers of all religions, the ascetics of all religions, come out of their cloister saying the exact same thing, which is we are all in this together. We are supposed to be a unified front against whatever's happening. Religion doesn't matter. Boundaries don't matter. We're supposed to be in this together. And what I have learned through our indigenous brothers and sisters is that this is a process, and the process has to happen. And that there is something on the other side of the process, right? So doing things like contributing to your neighbors, delivering toothbrushes and toothpaste and socks to somebody that you know is struggling. We just lost a well-known member of the, unhoused community. I forget his name, Rudy or something like that.
Monty.
Yeah, like
Jimmy
that.
Carter? Jimmy Carter?
No, he was
One of the
thinking of
homeless people.
one of the homeless,
in
yeah.
town.
Monte?
Yeah, Monty.
And then I got a couple minutes left. I'd really like to sing a song with you guys. And then I guess take a moment, having said that, to reflect on the tragedy that happened at Allseps last week. Someone's first day on the job, and they got into an altercation with the anger of part of our beloved Taos community, and decided it was a good idea to go outside, and lost his life right there on the sidewalk. So that, to me, accepting reality is a bitch. It is not an easy thing. It is not a comfortable thing. I think it's a necessary thing. And being able to stand in that. And there are millions of books written on how. All the yoga in the world, all the spiritual practice in the world, all the meditation in the world, whatever works for you. I really encourage you to find a way to stand up strong in the muck. You can sit in it for a while. It's okay. It's okay to sit in the shit. But we all have the capacity to rise up, however that looks for you. And we all have the capacity to grow from, and if the world is just a teacher, we must all be in grad school, man, because this is no joke, right? What we're having to deal with on a day-to-day basis, what's coming at us through through the airwaves and all that. So I encourage you to love one another, love yourselves, take these opportunities in your relationships. Again, with the guy at Smith's, or if you go to the World Cup and you see Chooch on the porch, love that woman. Sorry, I don't know if everybody knows her, but we're such a small community that you can kind of talk about those things. So I think that's kind of a good place to wrap things up. If anybody has a comment or a question, I'm glad to field a question, but otherwise, if I could leave you with anything, it would be to know and remember that you're stronger than you think you are, and you are, that was a cool sound. Was that a little alarm? Yes, sir.
So Jeffrey, I appreciate your story. It takes a lot of courage to reveal yourself in that manner. And it's amazing. And I often think that as long as we can keep in mind that the kingdom of God is not the star somewhere, it's within each of us. And it's often gets confused with heaven. Right?
It often gets
It's not
confused with
heaven.
that.
Communion, oneness with God, and oneness with each other. And you think of the tragic event you mentioned. Obviously, there was separation there. There wasn't oneness, and separation does lead to some bad things sometimes. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Your story.
You, Michael. I want to paraphrase what you just said, that the kingdom of God is within us, and often confused for heaven. And when we lose sight of that is when we experience that separation. And that ties in beautifully to, again, what I've read from everybody from St. Julian of Norwich to, I don't know, Punya Papaji, the Hindu saint, that it's all already happening. Like there is no enlightenment. There is no path to enlightenment. We're already there. And all you need to do is accept that. And the acceptance of the kingdom of God is within, you know. And however you want to translate that, if you just want to think of it as the entire power cell of the universe, because to me that's what it is. You know, this thing that we all are actively participating in, that to me is God. We are all aspects of that. So there's a divine thread in each one of us.
Following right on that, your talk made me think of an encapsulation that surrendering is empowering.
Exactly right. That's kind of the whole point. You could have done my whole 40 minutes with that sentence right there.
I like yours
surrendering is
better,
empowering.
but
Forgiveness is also empowering in a similar kind of way.
Just a reminder for all of us that shit is also known as fertilizer.
Shit is known as fertilizer. They thought they buried you, little did they know you were a seed. That's great.
Flower.
Yeah, I love it. Did somebody want to say hi over here? Yes, sir.
I have one more thing to say. Just this morning I was reading, it's one of the reasons I was a little late. And somehow something that should have jumped off the page 50 years ago jumped off the page. And as simple as it is, I realized that I've had somehow come unraveled around it. And it was like the God and Spirit and I are one.
Say again.
I don't have God and I don't have my spirit out here somewhere where I'm praying to it or whatever the case may be. It actually is inside. And it got me off the butt and got me here. So good to hear you speak. I appreciate
Oh,
it.
wonderful. See, there's
It was a simple
there's
thing.
no
I went,
coincidences.
Oh, wow, what a rush.
There you go. We're all in this thing together, and I really do believe in the universal thread that runs through us all. And I think that we can start to work with that frequency the more we become aware of it. And people call that psychic energy or whatever, but really we have a very real, tangible connection. They're even starting to be able to measure it with certain instruments, medical instruments. Like they can read this stuff now. They can see what happens in your theta waves when you become close physically to someone that you care for, like, you know, all that, and then your theta waves start to sync up. And this happens with singers. Choral groups get together and they've done these tests. Because I'm a choir director and a voice coach by trade, so my whole MO is singing, and they've done these tests where they get people and they just run their vitals, put them in rehearsal for a half an hour, run their vitals again. Heart rate's regulated, blood pressure's regulated, oftentimes synchronous. Conductors will continue to speak in a cadence that matches whatever they were conducting in. They'll speak in that cadence for like the next several hours. So there's a real and tangible impact on our bodies when we even just come together in this way. And doing the sweet little songs that we get to do together, like that immediately unites us again in a very real and tangible way that makes us stronger than we are, you know, individually. Immediately, it's an instant And I'm a singer, I'm a kirtan wala, and when I hear one person singing, it sounds like 3 voices, and when there's 3 people singing, it sounds like 10 voices. And when there's 10 people singing, it's 100. By the time we get to 100, we got a whole army, And let's not forget that all the symbols that I'm looking at right now are all reminders that we have not yet been defeated, right? Whatever it is that's going on, we're still here. Like this action, this vibration is still growing. Like we're still here. They didn't knock it off in the 60s. They didn't knock it off when Columbus got here. There's an evolution and development that's happening, and we're all part of it. And that's why we're here. That's why we're in this room.